There is a place in the northern desert of Mexico where the sky feels closer than it should, where the light bends strangely in the afternoon heat. Locals have called it many things over many generations. Scientists have cataloged its anomalies in careful, measured language. But the land itself refuses categorization. The land in this place simply is. Ancient and indifferent, and in some frequency, alive. Welcome back to Whispered Chronicles, echoes of forgotten lore. In our last journey, we stood where the earth seemed to remember the past. But here the mystery is stranger, because this is a place where the land does not simply remember, it responds. We are going to the Mapimí Desert. We are going to the Zone of Silence. The Chihuahuan Desert is the largest desert in North America. It covers 200,000 square miles across Mexico, New Mexico, and Texas. Volcanic rock formations rise from basin floors like knuckles of a buried giant. The scrub grows in clusters like writing in a script no linguist has decoded. The sky here is enormous. It is the kind of sky that makes philosophers of ordinary people, that makes you feel simultaneously significant and entirely erased. Within this desert, roughly 25 miles south of Sabalos and Durango, there is a region that covers approximately 50 kilometers of the Bolson de Mapimí. It sits at the convergence of three Mexican states, Durango, Chihuahua, and Sinaloa. A triangle of jurisdictions for a triangular mystery. When you enter this region by vehicle, and a vehicle is necessary, as there are no roads in the conventional sense, only tracks left by those who came before you, the first thing you notice is not the landscape. The landscape, however dramatic, is familiar enough in the broader context of the Chihuahuan. What you notice first is the radio, or rather the absence of what the radio should be doing. At some point, the signal dies. It's not gradually, but completely and instantaneously. Mid-song, mid-word. Replaced by a white static that sounds less like interference and more like presence. Like the static itself is a signal, broadcasting on a frequency your receiver cannot process. Travelers consistently report the same phenomenon. The AM band goes first, then FM. Most unsettlingly, shortwave, designed to travel thousands of miles, goes quiet in the zone. The compass is next, doesn't just point wrong. The needle becomes indecisive. As if searching for a north it cannot locate, or if north has become a matter of opinion. GPS signals exhibit similar instability, dropping and reacquiring in a puzzling pattern, suggesting the problem is not with the satellite, but with something happening between satellite and ground. And then there is the silence itself. The name is not metaphorical, or not entirely. The desert is never truly silent, but in the zone, the quality of sound changes. Travelers describe it as a thinning, as if the acoustic properties of the air are altered. Sounds that should carry seem to be absorbed rather than propagated. The desert drinks the sound. Scientists offer explanations, none entirely satisfying. Theories about unusual magnetic or deposits, concentrations of magnetite and uranium in the subsoil might interfere with electromagnetic transmission. The Mapimí region sits atop ancient lake beds and volcanic intrusions, creating unique mineral concentrations. These are real and documented facts, adding to the mystery of the Zone of Silence. The interference is measurable, at least partially. But measurable and explained are not the same thing, and the history of this place suggests that the electromagnetic anomaly is only the most surface level of its peculiarities. On February 8, 1969, the sky above the Mexican state of Chihuahua caught fire. At approximately 1:05 in the morning, a fireball described by witnesses across a region of hundreds of miles as brighter than the full moon tore across the darkness from east-northeast to west-southwest. It fragmented as it descended, the pieces spreading across a strewn field that would ultimately be mapped at over 300 square kilometers, making it one of the largest meteorite-strewn fields in recorded history. The impact occurred near the town of Pueblito de Allende, and so the meteorite, a collection of thousands of pieces ranging from grams to kilograms, was given the name it carries today. The Allende Meteorite is not simply a rock from space. To understand what it is, you have to understand what it came from. And to understand that, you have to think in timescales that genuinely resist human comprehension. The Allende Meteorite is a carbonaceous chondrite, a class of meteorite that represents some of the oldest solid material in the solar system. When researchers at the Smithsonian Institution and laboratories worldwide began analyzing the fragments in the weeks and months following the fall, they found something extraordinary. The Allende material contained calcium-aluminum-rich inclusions, structures known as CAS, that have been radiometrically dated to approximately 4.567 billion years old. That is not the age of the Earth. The Earth is roughly 4.5 billion years old. The Allende material predates the formation of our planet. What fell on Chihuahua in February of 1969 was a fragment of the solar nebula. This cloud of gas and dust collapsed to form our sun and everything that orbits it. The CAIs within Allende are, in the most literal sense, older than the world beneath your feet. They are remnants of the architecture of creation, a time capsule from the birth of the solar system. Analysis of Allende revealed isotopic anomalies, challenging existing models of solar system formation. Researchers found evidence of aluminum-26, a short-lived isotope produced by a nearby supernova. This stellar explosion occurred just before or during the formation of our solar system. The sun and everything that orbits it was seeded by the death of another star. We are, in a measurable sense, the children of a stellar catastrophe. Every atom of calcium in your bones, iron in your blood, was forged in a star that no longer exists. Allende carried the chemical fingerprints of that dead star to the desert floor of northern Mexico. The timing of its fall in February 1969 is noted with reverence in scientific literature. It provided pristine material precisely when lunar samples from Apollo missions became available for comparison. These two datasets reshaped our understanding of solar system chronology. This understanding is still being refined half a century later. The land that received this stone was already ancient. The Mapimí Basin had been accumulating geological strangeness for millions of years. Ancient seabeds lifted by tectonic forces, volcanic events, mineral concentrations deposited by water systems that no longer exist. And into this already anomalous landscape fell a piece of the solar system's first moments, carrying within it the chemical memory of a dead star. It is tempting, even for the measured and the careful, to wonder whether there is a principle at work, whether places of geological intensity draw to themselves objects of cosmological significance, or whether the significance we perceive is a pattern imposed by minds that hunger for meaning. We will leave that question open, as all good questions should be left. On July 11, 1970, an Athena missile, a test vehicle operated by the United States Air Force, was launched from the Green River Launch Complex in Utah. Athena missiles were used for testing high-altitude atmospheric re-entry and payload delivery systems. The technology was, in the language of the Cold War era, sensitive. The trajectory called for the missile to travel south over the American Southwest, following a flight path that had been calculated and approved. It did not follow that path. Somewhere in its flight, the Athena missile deviated from its programmed course. Not by a small margin, not the kind of deviation that can be attributed to a minor guidance failure or a weather anomaly. The missile traveled approximately 400 miles off its intended trajectory. It crossed the international border into Mexico without authorization or notification. And it came down in the heart of what locals already knew as the Zone of Silence. The U.S. government did not immediately publicize the Athena missile crash. Details of the recovery were kept from the public. However, it became public record that a substantial recovery operation took place in Mexico's Zone of Silence. A team affiliated with NASA and the U.S. military, wearing NASA-marked uniforms, entered the zone to recover missile debris. The recovery took considerable time, and it wasn't just about the missile itself. Witnesses reported the team removed not only wreckage, but significant quantities of soil. Trucks departed the zone carrying large quantities of soil samples, far beyond scientific sampling. These quantities suggested remediation of a contaminated site, raising unanswered questions. What was in the Athena missile's payload that necessitated such extensive soil removal? Athena rockets were used in research programs involving materials that could cause serious diplomatic and environmental incidents. The soil removal strongly implies ground contamination, serious enough to warrant a covert remediation. This was no simple recovery, but a secretive operation to contain an unknown threat. The electromagnetic interference in the zone had already been noted by researchers and locals before the missile incident, but the Athena event brought outside attention in a way that the region had not previously experienced. And it brought with it a persistent question. Did the missile go off course because of the zone's known electromagnetic anomalies? Or did it go off course for reasons that have nothing to do with local conditions? And is the site's anomalous nature merely a coincidence of geography? Neither explanation is fully satisfying. Sophisticated Cold War missile guidance systems should not be susceptible to magnetic interference. The electronics involved operated on entirely different principles, but the zone's electromagnetic peculiarities are not themselves fully understood. And should not and did not are sometimes different things, especially in landscapes that have not finished revealing their properties. What we can say with confidence is this: a United States military missile, equipped with technology that should have performed to specification, traveled 400 miles beyond its intended impact point and struck a place already known for its interference with electromagnetic signals. Whether that is coincidence, causation, or something more complicated is a question the official record has not answered. The soil went somewhere. The records of what was found in it, if they exist, are not public. Lay a map of the Earth flat before you. Draw a line at 33 degrees north latitude. Let your eye travel along it. You will pass through the Strait of Gibraltar, where the ancient world's known ocean met the edge of the map. You will cross northern Morocco and Algeria, brushing the Mediterranean coast of Africa. You will touch the Egyptian desert, north of the Valley of the Kings, and arrive at the Plateau of Giza, where, at approximately 29.97 degrees north, you find the Great Pyramids. The ancient Egyptians were precise engineers. They incorporated astronomical alignments into their structures with a sophistication we are still fully mapping. The latitude of Giza is close to, but not precisely at 33 degrees north. The relationship requires some interpretive generosity. Continue east along the 33rd parallel, and you reach Iraq, ancient Mesopotamia, and the ruins of Babylon. Sits at approximately 32.5 degrees north. Babylon, the center of one of the ancient world's most sophisticated civilizations. Builder of structures and astronomical observatories that encoded knowledge we are still decoding. Move further east, and you pass through Persia, through Afghanistan, through the Indian subcontinent. Move west from the Giza Plateau, and you cross the Atlantic and enter North America, where the 33rd parallel runs through the American South, through the desert southwest, and then drops into Mexico. The zone of silence sits at approximately 26.7 degrees north latitude. The 33rd parallel does not pass directly through it. This is a fact that deserves stating plainly, because the theory connecting the zone of silence to the 33rd parallel is one of the most frequently repeated elements of the zone's mythology, and it is not, in strict geographic terms, accurate. The zone lies south of the 33rd parallel by a meaningful margin, and yet the broader theory suggests a ring of sites around Earth. These locations cluster geological, electromagnetic, and historical anomalies. This concept is not entirely without foundation. The Earth's magnetic field is not uniform. There are regions where the field is weaker, behaving in locally anomalous ways. These regions do not distribute themselves randomly across the globe. The relationship between geological composition, electromagnetic behavior, and human tendency to mark places as sacred is a legitimate area of inquiry. Mainstream science has barely begun to take this seriously. The sites most often connected in this theory share certain characteristics. They sit atop geological formations of unusual complexity. They exhibit electromagnetic properties that distinguish them from surrounding areas. Across deep time, they have attracted human attention and human construction. Does this represent a genuine pattern of cause and effect? Does anomalous geology draw human settlement and spiritual attention? Or does it represent the human tendency to find patterns in noise? This question requires a more sophisticated investigative framework than we currently possess. What the zone of silence shares with sites like Giza and Babylon is not a latitude. It is a quality of attention. These are places that have refused across time to be ordinary. They have refused the comfortable interpretation. They have accumulated mystery like geological formations accumulate mineral deposits. Slowly, under pressure, layer by layer, until what you have is something genuinely different from the surrounding matrix. The engineers of the ancient world understood that the Earth is not uniform. They understood that certain places are different. They built their most significant structures in those places, aligning them to astronomical phenomena with precision. This required advanced mathematics and a philosophical commitment to the idea that Earth, sky, and human mind are expressions of the same underlying order. The Zone of Silence did not attract pyramid builders, but it attracted one of the most significant meteorites in scientific history, and a Cold War missile that had no logical reason to be there. Perhaps the ancient instinct to mark certain places as charged, as significant, as different, was responding to something real. The desert is not dead. It's one of the first things that surprises people who have grown up thinking of deserts as absence of water, absence of life, absence of complexity. The Chihuahuan Desert is one of the most biologically diverse arid regions on Earth. And the Mapimí Basin, despite its electromagnetic peculiarities, supports a remarkable array of life. But the life in the Zone of Silence is not quite like the life in the surrounding desert. Researchers and travelers have documented color variations in endemic cacti that are difficult to explain through conventional mechanisms. The purple and reddish tinting observed in certain specimens within the zone's boundaries is more pronounced than in specimens of the same species found in adjacent areas. The pigmentation, which in cacti generally serves as protection against ultraviolet radiation, appears to be expressed with unusual intensity. Whether this represents a genetic adaptation to locally elevated radiation levels, or a response to unusual soil mineral concentrations, or something else entirely has not been definitively established. The Bolson tortoise, Gophorus flavomarginatus, is one of the largest tortoises in North America and one of the most endangered. Its range has been reduced to a small portion of the Chihuahuan Desert. The Mapimí Biosphere Reserve is one of its last strongholds. Tortoises of the zone have been studied in conservation programs. Claims about their size and mutation are mythology. The reality is more nuanced. The population exhibits characteristics consistent with a long history of geographic isolation, a genetic signature of separation. This group has developed in relative independence. Geographic isolation, in evolutionary terms, is how difference accumulates. Counts of unusually large specimens of other species insects. Reptiles, plants are found more frequently within the zone's boundaries. Gigantism in isolated populations, particularly those exposed to elevated radiation levels, is a documented biological phenomenon. Whether the zone's conditions are producing anything of this kind requires a systematic study that has not been comprehensively conducted. What the biology of the zone suggests is that the land's anomalous properties are not simply an artifact of electromagnetic interference. The interference is one expression of something more fundamental. Difference in physical conditions from the electromagnetic spectrum down to soil. This extends up into the physiological responses of the organisms that live there. The zone is not merely a place where your radio stops working. It is a place where the basic parameters of the physical environment have been, in ways we cannot fully articulate, reset. There is a road that runs to a place called the House of the Pyramid, a small research installation. Built in the desert as part of the Mapimí Biosphere Reserve's infrastructure, the road is unpaved and in the rainy season impassable. In the dry season it is merely difficult. The installation itself, a modest structure built in the form of a pyramid, sits in the heart of the zone. It serves as a waypoint for researchers and as a reference point in accounts of people who encountered something they could not easily categorize. The encounters take a consistent form: solitary traveler or a small group, somewhere in the zone, broken down by the roadside, or camped for the night, or simply navigating the difficult terrain. They see figures in the distance. As the figures approach, witnesses describe them as tall, noticeably, uncommonly tall. Taller than the range of variation one normally encounters in a population, they are described as fair-skinned, an unusual characteristic in rural northern Durango, and as wearing ordinary clothing, not uniform, not unusual, not the costume of myth. They approach with a specific purpose. They ask for water. The request for water is banal in one sense. Water in the desert is a serious matter. People do run out of it, and asking strangers for water is not an unreasonable thing to do. What makes them remarkable in the accounts is what happens next. The strangers take the water or decline it or simply acknowledge the exchange, and then they walk back into the desert. Not to a vehicle, not to a structure. Into the desert itself, which in this region offers no concealment and no destination within the range of normal human locomotion. Witnesses describe watching the figures walk away and simply not seeing them anymore. Not losing them behind a rise or a rock formation, but losing them in the flat, open desert, where a person should remain visible for considerable distance in the clear desert air. The accounts come from multiple independent sources over a period of decades. They come from people with no particular interest in extraterrestrial visitation or paranormal phenomena. They are ranchers, mechanics, researchers, and truck drivers. People with practical relationships to the physical world. They report these experiences in a matter-of-fact tone, a form of evidence of their sincerity. What the tall visitors are, if not a story around a strange landscape, cannot be determined from evidence. The desert plays tricks. Heat, altitude, and isolation alter perception in measurable ways. The human mind fills gaps with patterns in disorienting environments. It's a survival mechanism. Everything reported might be the product of minds under stress in an electromagnetically anomalous environment. But it's also possible this landscape, affecting instruments and organisms, influences human experience. The terrain is strange. What moves through it becomes strange too. And so we arrive at the silence itself. The name came from a Mexican engineer, Harry de la Pena, who first documented radio interference in the 1960s. He described the effect as a zone where signals go silent, where communication is swallowed by the land. The name stuck. It became, in the decades that followed, something more than a radio phenomenon. It became an identity for a place that had accumulated enough strangeness to earn a mythology of its own. But silence is a more complicated thing than simply the absence of sound. We often speak of silence as emptiness, as the space left when everything else has been removed. But physicists will tell you that true silence, true emptiness, does not exist in nature. A perfect vacuum is not silent. It hums with quantum fluctuations of virtual particles, constantly appearing and disappearing at the boundary of existence. The cosmic microwave background, faint radiation from the Big Bang, fills all of space, including the space between your thoughts. There is no silence in the physical universe. Only the question of whether we are equipped to hear what is being said. What the zone of silence is a specific narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum. The frequencies we have assigned to our communications, our navigation, our understanding. It silences the frequencies of human self-orientation. The natural signals, the geological hum, solar wind, electromagnetic breathing of the living planet, are not silenced. If anything, they are more present, less obscured by the noise of human transmission. Perhaps this is the key to the zone that the name itself contains. It is not a place where communication ceases. It is a place where a particular kind of communication, the human kind, the digital and analog kind, the kind that runs along the surface of things and connects us to our own systems, that kind of communication is attenuated. And in the attenuation, something else becomes audible. It's not metaphorically, not in the language of the mystical. In the actual physical sense that a landscape can communicate through the geology of its stones, through the biology of its organisms, through the electromagnetic signature of its anomalous mineral deposits. The Allende Meteorite carried a message across 4.567 billion years of time, the chemical record of a star that died, so that our solar system could be born. It landed in this desert. An Air Force missile, guided by the most sophisticated navigation technology of its era, followed no logic but the logic of the landscape itself to crash in this same pocket of desert. Organisms that have lived here, across geological time, have been shaped by the specific physical conditions of this place into forms found nowhere else on Earth. And human beings, passing through this terrain, have experienced things they cannot explain with ordinary vocabulary. Is the zone broken? Is it a wound in the Earth's electromagnetic field? A flaw in the geological structure of the Chihuahuan Desert that creates interference and distortion, and from distortion, the appearance of the anomalous? Or is it something the opposite of broken, a place where the Earth's signal is clearest, where the layers of human electromagnetic noise have been stripped away, and what remains is the fundamental channel on which the planet broadcasts? The desert does not answer. The desert has never answered questions in languages we recognize. It answers in dust and heat and the slow revolution of the stars above the basin floor. It answers in the silent spinning of compass needles and the purple tinge of cactus skin, and the tall figures walking away into the open flats where no person should be able to disappear. There are places on this earth that have served across the full span of human time as thresholds, not doors to anywhere specific, but places where the membrane between the known and unknown becomes thin. What is normally invisible becomes briefly perceptible, not supernatural. Natural in the deepest sense of the word, preceding our categories and instruments. Natural in a way that precedes our considerable pride in what we think we understand. The Mapimí Desert is one of those places. The Zone of Silence is one of those places. The land remembers what fell on it, a stone older than the world, a missile guided by no compass, the footsteps of figures who asked for water, and walk into the disappearing distance. The land holds all of it, the way stone holds heat, slowly, deeply, and for a very long time. There is something speaking in the silence of the zone. The question is not whether we can prove it. The question is whether we are quiet enough, humble enough, and still enough to begin to hear it. Some places demand that kind of stillness. This is one of them. And maybe that is what unsettles us most about places like this. Not that they are strange, but that they suggest the world has always been stranger than we are comfortable admitting. The Zone of Silence does not offer proof. It offers pressure. A quiet feeling that the systems we use to orient ourselves, our signals, our maps, our instruments, are thinner than we want them to be, and that beyond them the Earth is still speaking in languages older than humanity itself. Thank you for being here and for walking through the silence with me on Whispered Chronicles, echoes of forgotten lore. If you find yourself drawn to places like this, places where the world seems to bend just slightly away from what we expect, consider subscribing. Stay close. There are more echoes waiting. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.